And just taking a minute or two to go live on Facebook, and then we will get started. I think we may be having some chat problems because I am not seeing anything new, and I feel like we had that before. Is anybody able to put anything in chat? Can one of our Zoom teamers try, like Cassidy or Mark, and just, aha, there we go. Anyone here? I see that, Hannah. Okay, and I see Anna's. It's great. Okay, so I think chat hopefully is working. Yeah. How are we doing with Facebook?
We are live.
We are live on Facebook. Fantastic. Thank you. Well, everybody, welcome. I am Sari Karp. I'm the Executive Director of Sustainability Matters. We are a small conservation nonprofit in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia, rapidly expanding throughout other parts of Virginia. We've been running a lot of webinars these past couple of years that are pulling in pretty wide audiences, international audiences in many cases. We really specialize in trying to make sustainability and conservation fun as much as possible, and we will try to do that today, even though this is not a particularly fun topic. And we also specialize in giving you concrete information that is realistic, that you can use, that everyday people can find, is accessible, and not expecting a lot of special knowledge or special tools or a particular viewpoint. And so we have been talking about spotted lanternfly for years now. We're only a 4-year-old organization, and I feel like spotted lanternfly has been in our region, the Northern Shenandoah Valley, for about as long as that. And so early in, I guess it was 2019, maybe, we partnered with this man here, Mark Sutphin from Virginia Cooperative Extension, to offer a big in-person event when spotted lanternfly had really just shown up in the Northern Shenandoah Valley in the city of Winchester. People didn't know what it was. They didn't know why they should care. And we were educating about a lot of different aspects of it. And then we did that again the next year when it showed up in a new county. And now we're doing it online. And we're doing it because spotted lanternfly has really spread throughout the Mid-Atlantic region, to other parts of the East Coast and into the Midwest. It is a hitchhiker. It moves very fast. It originally came from the other side of the world, and Mark will tell you a little bit more about that. But even though I'm living in Virginia now, I am originally a New Yorker, and I know that my friends in the city have started to see them. Just in the past month, there has been a huge change in the number of spotted lanternflies that they've been seeing. About a month ago, I was hearing, oh, this kind of polka-dotted like butterfly thing landed on me. It was kind of pretty. And then after it flew away, I realized that this might be the thing that you were talking about that's all over Virginia now, or all over your city. And now, a month later, we are hearing that they are everywhere and that they are swarming on the sides of skyscrapers. So we are here to tell you what it's like living with them, because some of the people here have been living with them under the insect occupation, as we say, for years. And also, how you can probably not prevent them showing up in your area forever or spreading in your area forever, but slow the spread. What is realistic in terms of what you can do, what you can't do about spotted lanternfly, what you should be looking for, how stressed you should be or not be, because we've been there. And, we want to try to give the benefit of our experience to you all. So our main presenters today will be Mark Sutphin, who was the reluctant host for the first arrival of spotted lanternfly in Virginia. His job as senior extension agent for the Northern Shenandoah Valley meant that he was the point man for the new invasive bug. And he was hosting all kinds of entomologists looking at how to kill this bug, how to deter this bug. He has been for years hosting people reporting ladybugs and lichen and all kinds of things that were not spotted lanternfly, and a lot of people not recognizing it when they saw it, despite all the attempts at education. Kim Herbstritt is a city councilor in the city of Winchester, which is where spotted lanternfly first appeared in Virginia. She is also really the most dedicated spotted lanternfly warrior I know. She's been watching out for spotted lanternfly before it even appeared. She may have been one of the first residents in Winchester to notice it on her property. She then entertained us all tremendously by taking some of the nymphs indoors and keeping them in a fish tank because she wanted to actually see them metamorphose into adults. She had some questions for Mark in the process that he was not very good at answering because originally the nymphs kept dying on her and Kim wanted to know how to keep them alive till they metamorphosed. And Mark said that was not something he was researching. But eventually she got there. I think one of those pictures behind her is the spotted lanternfly in the process of metamorphosis. It's definitely an interesting insect. But I'm going to turn it over to Hannah Beeman, who is our scientific programs coordinator, and she's also our Zoom team leader for tonight. So she's going to do some of the tech housekeeping and tell you how things are going to work and put up a poll so we will know where you're from and whether you're seeing spotted lanternflies already. But just we're grateful that you are all here. We hope that you will keep coming to Sustainability Matters webinars and to other programs, that you will maybe get involved as a volunteer or get involved as a member. We are a membership supported organization. That's part of how we are able to do free webinars like this. So we hope that you'll get involved and support us if you find this useful. And we also want to say thanks to our Zoom team tonight. Our Zoom team, Cassidy and Abigail and Anna, are all Smithsonian Mason School of Conservation students who are working with us this semester at the nearby Smithsonian Conservation Biology Institute. And they are here to help answer your questions as they can and also just wrangle the questions and get them to the presenters. So we're excited that everybody's here. And like I said, I think we'll manage to create a little bit of community around this kind of disturbing invasive insect. Hannah?
All right, everyone, thank you. I see that you are working on completing the poll. We appreciate that. Just a little bit of housekeeping tonight. If you have questions during the presentation, please type them into the Q&A area rather than the chat. That way we'll see the questions as we're going and can try to answer them or direct them to the panelists at the end. If you have anything else interesting to say to our Zoom friends and neighbors, please do feel free to type in the chat during the presentation so we can all join in the conversation there. And do be sure to set the chat drop down to everyone so that we can all see your very interesting comments and reply. And then participants will get a time-limited recording of the webinar via email by tomorrow morning, and it'll be available for viewing in the video section of our Facebook page, and an edited version will eventually be on our YouTube, just in case you miss any parts or want to share this fascinating information tonight.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, I see that we have a lot of our fellow Shenandoah Valley residents who may or may not be seeing them because they're not everywhere in the valley. They are pretty much everywhere in Winchester and in the county that Winchester's in, I would say, but spreading sporadically elsewhere. Do we want to show people the results of the poll so they can see where their co-participants are from? Fantastic. So lots of our neighbors, and like Hannah said, this will be available later, so people can watch it. And often what we find with the webinars is that people are rewatching on YouTube or on Facebook for quite some time to come. And you can also find others of our webinars on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. There are a lot of videos of the greener than grass programs that we have, which are eco-friendly landscaping and kind of DIY information on how you can do that, how you can convert your lawn to something more environmentally friendly. We're also hosting a couple more live webinars on that topic if you go to the events page on our website coming up in November, geared particularly at small spaces. All right, do we want to go ahead and turn it over to Mark? And then well, so we're stopping sharing the pool. There we go. Fantastic.
All right, double check on my audio because I switched to a headset due to some activities happening here in the building that are distracting.
I think we can hear you well.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us. I am Mark Sutphin, and my role here as an extension agent with Virginia Cooperative Extension, as Sari alluded, the spotted lanternfly showed up here in Virginia, and it was the second known infestation of spotted lanternfly in the United States at the time it showed up here. So unfortunately, I have been kind of at ground zero for the population in Virginia and dealing with this insect now since 2018 for a total of 5 years, dealing with an overload of phone calls and emails and reports of spotted lanternfly in and around the area and really throughout the state and beyond. So in the last 5 years, I've had the opportunity to learn a lot about this insect. Understanding and research certainly is still continuing and lots still to learn, but we'll give you a brief overview of this insect, where it's found, the various life stages, and then kind of what you might expect in the home landscape and what you may see with this insect as it arrives if you've not yet already experienced it. So spotted lanternfly is an invasive insect pest, and a little bit about an invasive insect pest. It's obviously a non-native, and it exists in an area with no natural predators, and to help keep it in check and keep the population levels in check, and it has an adverse impact to the local ecosystem and possibly the economy due to its invasive nature. Spotted lanternfly is native to regions of Asia, China, Bangladesh, Vietnam. It also spread as an invasive pest in Asia to Japan and South Korea. And then it first showed up in North America, in the United States, in Berks County, Pennsylvania in 2014. So that is kind of in the central area of this blue on the map I'm showing you here of the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast in the United States. And Berks County, Pennsylvania saw this pest in 2018, as I alluded, or sorry, 2014. We saw it here in Winchester, Frederick County in 2018, and I'll show a map about where we are in Virginia for those out of state and not familiar with Virginia as much. But spotted lanternfly as an invasive pest, unfortunately, can impact ag crops. Grape production is our greatest concern for spotted lanternfly, and also a forest pest because it likes species like black walnut, red maple, and others that may have timber value or are important in the ecosystem in the forest setting. It's also a nuisance pest in the home landscape, and you'll hear from Kim later, and I'll show you some slides as well that really get to that. And it's also a pest of general commerce. And as you'll note on the map and what is showing right now on the screen, the counties and localities outlined in red are under state quarantine for this pest. So that impacts general commerce, moving goods around, moving plant material around. The commercial businesses have to inspect their materials and ensure that they're free of spotted lanternfly before moving outside of the quarantine areas. And I think we'll be providing some more information on those quarantines, and they differ a little bit from state to state, but in general get at the same gist of not intentionally moving spotted lanternfly around. And the benefit of this is really to ensure that commerce can continue and gives us a legal way to move commerce and ensure that it's free of spotted lanternfly so it doesn't get stopped at state borders or international borders. Moving on, this shows you Frederick County. We're right at the northern tip of Virginia, about 60 miles west of Washington, D.C. And as I alluded, spotted lanternfly showed up here, or was first detected. It likely showed up prior, maybe several years prior to this detection, January 10th, 2018, by a Virginia Department of Ag and Consumer Services plant health investigator. And originally identified in a small infestation area, unfortunately quickly grew beyond that. And despite attempts and ongoing funding through the USDA and the state departments of agriculture, we see this pest obviously still spreading. This is our current distribution in Virginia. The red counties are those under quarantine. Yellow counties are where populations have been identified really since spring of 22. So you can see continued expansion even here in Virginia. And this pest, unfortunately, is a great hitchhiker. And we see kind of detailed in this map, even if you're familiar with the Interstate 81 corridor, and even some rail traffic through this area, that's largely how we see this insect moving around. So do your due diligence and don't intentionally move this insect. And moving on, wanting to show you, this is the adult spotted lanternfly. You see it in the background of some of our panelists tonight. And this is the adult with its wings folded over. You don't see that bright, beautiful undercoat, orange, bright red. You rarely see that actually, unless the insect is frightened, giving its predatory defense, or in flight. So typically this is how you see the adult insect. Quite a beautiful creature. It's unfortunate that it's so destructive. And as we see spotted lanternfly exist, it can build up in extremely high numbers, and then they tend to aggregate. At feeding sites, they'll aggregate, honestly, for reasons we yet don't know, but are believing it has to do with mating and dispersal, and still trying to understand what attracts them to one another and the vicinity. It seems that they can be attracted to their own waste, the honeydew product, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But this is a bit of the nuisance that you can see, and even the destruction to ag crops with the photo in the top right in wine grape production. They will aggregate in high numbers and feed and weaken the plants. The bottom right photo is adults on Tree of Heaven. That's Ailanthus altissima, sometimes called paradise tree. Here in the Shenandoah Valley, a lot of folks will call it sumac. I'll state, don't confuse that with the native sumac, even though they look somewhat similar. But Tree of Heaven, or Ailanthus altissima, is also an invasive weed species. We'll talk about that at the end of the webinar if there's time, but that's native to Asia and the two species coexist there. The photo on the left is an ornamental cherry tree in Pennsylvania and just heavily infested. Again, not an ideal situation in your backyard, especially with play equipment and children running around. More on the aggregation and even hitchhiking. This time of year, late August, early September, we're kind of moving beyond this aggregation phase and dispersal phase, but they will be attracted to structures, tall buildings, tall poles, gas pumps and awnings, and you just see them in the infestation areas in high numbers at these locations late August, early September. And hopefully this video will play okay, but I alluded to the honeydew waste, and that's the poop from spotted lanternflies. And if you look at this multi-trunk silver maple up close, you can see the liquid just raining down out of that tree. I'm going to play that again. Again, this was a warm afternoon about a week or two ago here in Winchester, Frederick County. And you can see lots of adult spotted lanternflies on that silver maple. And there are literally thousands in that tree excreting their waste, and it's just raining down, coating everything. Not a pleasant situation. That honeydew waste is a sticky, sugary liquid substance, and it coats everything. Again, it's coming from the lanternflies because they are piercing, sucking insects, feeding on the sap of the host plant. And it literally, as you saw in that video, rains down out of the host tree where they exist in high numbers. And on that sugar substrate, you can get a fungus called sooty mold that will begin to grow. And this too is a photo sent to me from an arborist friend here in Winchester, Virginia. And this was a vehicle that had parked under a tree of heaven and a mimosa tree that had sat there for quite some time this year. And you can see a red vehicle, now mostly black because of all of the sooty mold growing on the hood of that car. Here is that sooty mold growing on leaves in the understory underneath of a heavily infested tree. This can happen in the grape growing situation in wine grape production. And in addition to the resources being pulled out of the host plant, the wine grape or whatever host they're feeding on, you also get this coating on the lower canopy, and the sooty mold then starts blocking photosynthesis, further weakening the host plant. I threw these photos in here as well. I know the one on the left is not high quality, and I'll talk about that situation a little bit. But again, the honeydew waste is a sticky, sugary substance, and it attracts stinging insects. So you get hornets and yellow jackets and bees and wasps and even butterflies and other insects attracted to these locations to feed on that sugar substrate. And the photo on the left is from a few years ago, but I had a beekeeper reach out to me who had been contacted by a city resident here in Winchester, and the individual believed she had a honeybee swarm in her tree out back. And the beekeeper looked at it and said, "No, ma'am, you don't have a honeybee swarm in the tree. You have a spotted lanternfly infestation." And these are tree of heaven in the backyard of a young family with kids and pets playing out back. Lots of spotted lanternfly raining down that honeydew, and all the red circles show just a few of the honeybees and bumblebees that were visible in that photo, but there were literally hundreds of them swarming around that tree, feeding on the honeydew. Not the pleasant situation in the backyard of a young family with pets and kids. You can see also noted in this photo, you see the white substrate at the bottom of the tree. And this is basically fermenting yeast starting to grow from all the honeydew and sap oozing out of that tree, just raining down underneath of it. Maybe if there is a positive in this story is after multiple years of heavy feeding, we can see tree death in Tree of Heaven. This is actually one of the largest Tree of Heaven I'm aware of here in the Winchester area. And it is all but dead at this point after multiple years of heavy feeding. The scale of that tree doesn't really show up, but that trunk is at least 6 feet in diameter. Had a photo with some forestry friends taken in front of it, and there were 6 of us standing in front of it, nearly all in front of that single trunk. So we do see that, and honestly, that can pose another threat when you have dying trees now potentially becoming a fall hazard. So beware of that. Moving on to the life cycle of the spotted lanternfly, as I alluded, right now we're in the adult life stage of this insect, as depicted here. This is a female actually laying her eggs on the underside of a branch, and that's typically where you will see them lay them on the bottom side of a horizontal branch. Gives them, we believe, some protection from the elements and predators, and they will lay their eggs in rows, upwards of 20 to 30 eggs per mass, and each female seems to be able to lay 2 to 3, maybe more egg masses in her lifespan. I will note that thankfully we only see one complete life cycle per year. So as I talk through the life stages, you'll learn that, but thankfully we don't see multiple life stages or life cycles in the same year. A little bit more about the egg masses. This is a photo from a few years ago, and you can see at the bottom of the left-hand photo some of the egg masses, or the eggs that didn't get covered, but the female will coat them with a substance and offer them protection. That substance will dry, and as it ages and cracks, it will change colors, but they can be bright white when they're first laid and deposited, and then kind of take on a tan or brown, gray appearance throughout the aging process. This is a underside of a tree branch with just loads of egg masses. Even in the top left there, you'll see an old egg mass with some slits in it. That's from the previous year or two, and the nymphs, the young juvenile spotted lanternfly, is already hatched out of that one. We talked about it being a great hitchhiker, and this is one way of moving the population around. In fact, we believe egg masses came into the United States on ornamental landscaping stone, and that's how they first arrived in Berks County, Pennsylvania, by moving some egg masses from Asia. And moving these around to an uninfested area, as you can see, might be easy to do on outdoor equipment, grills, patio furniture, umbrellas. Even lights and fixtures can sometimes be where the egg masses are laid. Can start an entire new population if it's moved out of the area. Some more egg mass photos just to give you some ideas of those, because they can be the most cryptic stage of this insect to identify. The top right photo again is another old egg mass, and you can see some slits where the nymphs have already hatched and emerged out of that egg casing. The photo at the bottom right is at a scrapyard where this tractor trailer had been abandoned. But again, show this photo to depict how easy it can be to move egg masses with anything stored outside during the fall months when they're laying eggs from mid-September all the way to the beginning of November. A few more photos of egg masses, again, typically on the underside of branches. just to point these out, the one in the top left shows the difficulty actually to see the egg masses on a cloudy day. Bright sunny days offer some better viewing for the egg masses up in the canopy of the tree. And the difficult piece with this is it's looking like only about 2% of the egg masses are laid within human reach. So it's difficult to actually get to many of these and destroy them in the winter months. The photo in the top right, I show that to show you that even egg masses can be laid on small diameter material. About the size of a pencil is some of the smallest I've observed. And here we are. So fast forwarding to spring, the egg masses are the life stage that will exist throughout the winter months. And we get to these young black and white nymphs, and that's what hatches out of the egg masses. And we go through 3 life stages looking like this. They'll aggregate in high numbers, feeding on the vegetative young growth of lots of different species of plant material. Spotted lanternfly are known to feed on over 100 species, 100 host species. Here on the left is a native grapevine. On the right is tree of heaven. And again, just aggregating and feeding in high numbers. Some more closer up photos of those younger nymphs. They actually have instar 1, 2, and 3 that are black and white, and you can see a little bit of the size difference. And then the 4th instar we see on that photo on the right, showing the red coloration. Here's some more photos of that 4th instar nymph, the juvenile spotted lanternfly. These tend to show up in mid-June or so, at least in the region where I am, in the northern part of Virginia. And a host species that they really like at this life stage, in addition to grapevine and tree of heaven, is black walnut. We see them really heavily feeding on black walnut at that 4th instar stage. And so this is the request, to kill these insects whenever you can. And the whole piece on reporting it really varies depending on where you are. If you're outside of the known infestation area and find spotted lanternfly, please definitely report it to your local extension office or to the State Department of Agriculture. And unfortunately, where I am in the northern Shenandoah Valley, we've got and reached the point where it's well established and not asking for any more reports of spotted lanternfly really within any of the known quarantine area in Virginia. So what can you do about it, and what might you see in the home landscape? And that is the same silver maple tree on the left that I showed the video of. The tree on the right is a river birch, and actually both of these trees are in my backyard and my neighbor's backyard. The silver maple is in my neighbor's yard, and really is the real life situation that I'm dealing with at my house here in Frederick County. So stomping them out, using a fly swatter to kill these adults. My 6-year-old son and I have even used flip-flops to smash them. I have a volunteer that works with me here in the office, and she has been successful at using sticky tape and wrapping that around her hands and just capturing them by patting the tree. So now that the females have mated and are full gravid with eggs, they're a lot slower and easier to actually smash and get. But a quick tip in dealing with them, they can jump and go quite a long distance and be difficult to smash. So they will only jump forward, and if you approach them from the front, they tend to freeze in place and less likely to jump away from you. So that can be a tip in getting them. You'll even see online a lot of folks recommending catching them in bottles, catching them in kind of milkshake containers with a larger lid and an opening. So lots of tips out there in catching these adults. But the difficult piece, and Kim, I think will allude to this as well, is spotted lanternfly. And as you're seeing here, can literally occur by the thousands in a single tree. And so it just becomes sometimes quite an unmanageable situation. Research continues across the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast and beyond, really from the USDA, the state departments of ag, the land-grant universities in each state are involved, as well as the extension outreach arm of those land-grant universities. That's how I'm tied into this as the outreach arm of Virginia Tech and Virginia State University here in Virginia. And I'll note what you're seeing a picture of here, we call a circle trap or a modified circle trap around that post and around the tree in the bottom left. And that can be an effective trapping device that can be used in the home landscape. Lots of resources out there, again, available from USDA, state departments of ag, the land-grant universities and extension resources, all throughout all the states that are impacted and even those expecting to be impacted soon. I'll note this spotted lanternfly management guide put together by Penn State Extension. It's a really comprehensive guide. It's a little bit of a long read. If you print it out, it's nearly 20 pages or so. But really comprehensive, gives great information on potential host plants, time of year that they're attracted to those various hosts, and what you can do at each life stage to manage spotted lanternfly. And then just a few quick slides, if there's time, on recognizing tree of heaven. This is, again, an invasive species as well, native to Asia, that has been in North America really since the 1700s. It was brought over for ornamental purposes and maybe some others. It's a plant that occurs separately as male and female. So what you're looking at here are some female trees with the seed pods, actually quite a beautiful tree, if I can say that, but they will really grow anywhere and produce prolifically by seed and sprout up on any disturbed site. Even the crack in the sidewalk or between the sidewalk and the building, as shown here, they can establish. The tree itself and the leaf is a pinnately compound leaf. So the drawing there in the top right is one single leaf with many leaflets. And there are some look-alike species like the native sumacs that I mentioned earlier. Black walnut also is a pinnately compound tree that looks much like this, but one of the easiest identifying characteristics is the leaflets will have an entire margin. So they'll be smooth around the edges of the leaflet, other than these little lobes at the base of the leaflet that you can see there on the bottom right. And that's the underside of the leaf. You'll see some glands there, and that's where they release their not so fragrant smell that they're known for, the tree of heaven. And part of the defense mechanism with spotted lanternfly is picking up chemicals from tree of heaven so that they taste bad to predators, and then have that orange, the orange underwings that can ward off predators. The bark of tree of heaven, much like a reptile kind of looking bark, especially as the tree ages, lots of lenticels and large leaf bud scars. Here are some photos of them in bloom, and then the samaras on the female tree as those are forming the seed pods. And here's the staghorn sumac, a look-alike tree. And one thing I'll note, you can kind of see in this photo is the serrated leaflet edges on that pinnately compound leaf. And you'll see that also on black walnut. It will be serrated much like a saw, toothed edges instead of the entire smooth edge. So with that, I'll finish my presentation for now, Sari, and I don't know if you want to open it to questions or we'll go in to our next presenter.
I think, yeah, we do have a number of questions. Some have been answered in chat. But maybe we'll turn it over before we get to the questions quickly to Kim to really talk about some of her experiences as a spotted lanternfly, really as a spotted lanternfly warrior. And I do just want to add that at some point next year, we may come to a webinar version of the in-person events that we did before the pandemic, just to reach a wider audience with more detailed information on Tree of Heaven and how to eradicate it, because that's a fairly complicated situation that we don't have time to get into. And if you do it wrong, you make the situation worse. And also on some of the latest research. There's a lab near here that is doing some really cutting edge research on spotted lanternfly. And I know we've had some questions on that. And so we may bring Tracy Lesky and her whole team in next year for that. One fun fact before I turn it over to Kim, who's probably going to be super depressing, particularly those of you from New York might be interested in the fact that Tree of Heaven was the tree that grew in Brooklyn. That's the one that is about, and it, I mean, it's a useful, or has been considered a useful tree because it will grow where nothing else will, which also means that it has a tremendous survival instinct. It's the spotted lanternfly. With that, Kim, your spotted lanternfly saga.
Oh, that's just wonderful. That's wonderful to hear, Sari. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for that presentation, Mark. It's always great to get your presentations. They're always so comprehensive and full of great pictures. So I was thinking back on my initial experience with spotted lanternfly, and if I remember correctly, I think I actually went to a presentation that you did, Mark, at I think it was the Farm Credit Union back, gosh, that must have been about 4 years ago or something. And I just remember leaving that presentation and going like, oh, wow, man, it must be terrible to have spotted lanternfly. And then it was a matter of time that I had let my dog outside. I don't know, it was like several months later. And then here my dog comes in with this little black bug on it that has little white spots. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I think that's a spotted lanternfly. And sure enough, it was. And so I actually had it on my property. I do live in Winchester. And so ever since then, it has been a journey, an experiment, research, you name it, to try and figure out how to handle and manage this really problematic pest. It was initially on a mulberry bush. I do have some black walnuts. I didn't see it on the black walnuts. There was a large Tree of Heaven down the alley. I never saw it on that. But there were eggs on the mulberry tree as a small mulberry bush. And then there were grapevines. So that's where I had originally seen it. And I kind of embarked on this journey of trying to figure out how to actually kill this thing. And I ended up taking the mulberry tree down. Now has since grown back up, but that took care of them from that location. And then they kind of moved to another location. And over the last probably 3 years, it's been increasingly problematic on the maple tree in my front yard where I park my car under. And you can see in the picture behind me, the honeydew waste that Mark was talking about that gets dropped by these pests. And I was mentioning earlier when we were talking before the Zoom call started that, at the peak of the season, I could probably go to the car wash every single day. because of the honeydew waste that gets dropped. It is so challenging. And so that, you know, I think that's, you know, almost gets to having to park your car somewhere else, but it's definitely a challenge. The things that I would say that I have done, I've cut back vegetation, I've cut down vegetation. I have pretty consistently been out there, you know, pretty much every evening, with the exception of the last month or so. It does seem like there have been less. And again, we were talking about this earlier, and I hadn't thought about this, Mark, but it is a really interesting observation that it does seem like there have been less over the last month or two, as compared to last year this time. So does that mean that they're tapering off for a season? I don't know. We'll see what happens next year, but definitely cut down vegetation. I'm out there pretty regularly with a fly swatter and a squirt bottle. And what I found is if you can just squirt them, sometimes even just with water, because I don't like to use chemicals, then they'll fly and they'll come to the trunk of the tree. And then I just swat them with the fly swatter. So, so I've done that. The other thing that I've done is I got the Virginia Cooperative Extension. I think it was you guys that had it, or maybe it was USDA had a training that I went through, which was incredibly informative, and then really educating and telling friends and neighbors and, you know, coworkers, because some people see it and they're like, oh my gosh, it's such a cool looking butterfly or whatever. I'm like, no, you need to understand the impacts of this. Whenever you see it, stop it, squish it, kill it. And it's interesting because I think it's kind of like the spotted lantern stomp, because you could see people are trying to stomp it, and you see them like try and stomp 3 times, and from across the street I can go, oh, they must be trying to get a spotted lanternfly. It's just kind of funny, but so those are things that I've done. I think it's really spreading the word. The other thing I know that here in Winchester and Frederick County, there were ads on the public transportation, on the buses. There are ads, I think, in the paper. I think it's really getting the information out to people and educating them that this really is a bad bug. You know, kill it whenever you can. As far as the impacts, you know, again, I think if it wasn't for the honeydew waste, I probably wouldn't care about this bug. It is so problematic from the standpoint of dropping that waste, and, you know, whether it's on your vehicle or on an awning, at a restaurant, or you know, anywhere. I mean, it's just it's terrible. And when you do have hundreds, if not thousands of them in a tree, it's really a challenge. I had actually, there was a tree down the street here that where it was totally infested, and, you know, to this day, and I've tried to reach out to the homeowner, and to this day, you know, nothing's been done, and you can see just the black sooty mold that's all around it, and on the leaves and on the ground, and, you know, it's terrible. But what's happening is that all of those spotted lanternflies are probably, some of them are venturing off to other trees, and that's just how it all spreads and just keeps going. So I would just encourage everybody to be vigilant, share the information you get tonight, check out the links, get trained, pay attention to when you're, you know, in your vehicle moving from one location to the next. Just, you know, do a walk around your vehicle and pay attention to things like that, because it's really an invasive species that I think, you know, I'm hoping that we've had, it seems like 4 or 5 years of just ever increasing numbers and impact, that maybe we're going to see a little bit of a drop off. I don't know, but I'm hoping that that's the case. So I'll leave it at that, and happy to answer any questions that folks might have.
Thank you. And like I said, I hope it wasn't too depressing. I think our team has been doing a great job getting to a lot of the questions, and Mark has been following up on some of them. Before we turn it over to see if there are more questions, we do have another light moment. Hannah, would you like to show off your very special jewelry? So Hannah's earrings, if you can see them, are actual spotted lanternfly wings. One of Hannah's favorite hobbies is making really cool earrings out of many, many different things. And I guess something that we should add is we do not normally kill insects to make earrings or for any other reason. We love insects. Most of our programs, like if you come to our greener than grass workshops, our sustainable landscaping workshops, really everything that we do is to help insects, to help beneficial insects, pollinators, the type of, predatory insects that eat the bad insects, and really working on creating habitat for that. So for us to be hosting a webinar that's essentially telling you to kill something is very unusual. We're not into spraying lots of pesticides normally or chemicals on anything. And this is really a case of something that is very invasive. And so we would encourage you to make lots of earrings. And we even thought about holding a raffle, right? To encourage people to become members, to join Sustainability Matters. So for anybody who chooses to join Sustainability Matters as a member during this webinar tonight, you have a chance to win a pair of Hannah's earrings. And we'll put the membership link back in chat if one of the Zoom team wants to do that. And hopefully that will get some fun out of this evening, as well as useful information. Do we have chat? I know, Abigail, you flagged a couple in the Q&A that weren't really answerable by the Zoom team. Mark may have gotten to those by now. I know we'd had a lot of questions about the research angle.
I believe that Mark was able to get to some of them. I'm still going through them right now.
Okay. Does anybody know, is there anything,
Yes.
well, there is a question about should we be planting trees with this going on? Sounds like we shouldn't be planting black walnut. Are there any species they don't seem to like?
I guess I'll chime in there a little bit. So it seems to be a general maybe misnomer that they're going to feed on all species and outright kill all species, and that's just not the reality of the situation we see. Really, to date, the only known host plants that have been killed due to spotted lanternfly feeding are tree of heaven and grapevines. So yes, they will feed on many other plants, even many mature trees like black walnut, red maple, silver maple, willows, birches. They will stress those trees, but or potentially stress those trees when you see that amount of honeydew coming out, that's a lot of carbohydrates coming out of that tree. So you're obviously impacting that tree. Quantifying that has yet to really been teased out in data. And yeah, the recommendation would be to keep your trees from further stress, if especially drought stress. But thankfully, most species other than tree of heaven, grapevine, they're not feeding on all year long. So I think that's some of the benefit. We see the maples and birches and willows really later in the year, in the adult time frame. Maybe an interesting, I was going to say, maybe an interesting topic to talk about that I saw in the Q&A was related to predators and maybe some of the enemies that are attacking spotted lanternfly in China. So part of the thing with an invasive species is you don't have a species, a predator species that really specializes on that insect to help keep it in check, typically in the new introduced area. And that's certainly the case with spotted lanternfly. There are many predators that are learning to feed on this. We see praying mantis, we see species of bird learning to feed on this. We see spiders and hornets and ants and other predators, generalist predators, feeding on them. But when you literally have thousands, maybe 10,000 in a single tree, it takes a lot of these general predators to feed and take care of a spotted lanternfly population. So if you had 10,000 spotted lanternflies, as you saw in that silver maple, it would probably take you in upwards of that many praying mantis to feed on that many spotted lanternfly, and you're gonna be complaining about that as well. So unfortunately, there is not a specialist that is taking on spotted lanternfly in North America. In Asia, where spotted lanternfly is native, we see multiple parasitoid wasps that help keep the population in check. There are some that parasitize the egg mass, and there is one that will parasitize the young nymphs. At least 3 species that I'm aware of are being studied in quarantine labs, and that's usually a multi-year, maybe a decade-long process to study before ruling out inadvertent impact that may happen in the environment if those are reared and released. So we're still a ways out from rearing and releasing those from what I'm seeing.
Just a quick note, we are getting close to the end of our allotted time, but we will do what we sometimes do and some of these particularly exciting webinars and continue on for a while because there are still questions. So we hope that most of you are able to stick with us. Back on the tree topic, we had a question about a specific tree. I don't know, Mark, do you have any knowledge of pawpaws and whether they are particularly fond or not fond of pawpaws?
That's a good question. I don't know that I personally see them feed on pawpaw. And I don't recall seeing them on the list of over 100 host plant species, but I would have to go back to that paper and look and verify if that's a documented species. I would say it's not in their top 10 favorite host plants. So there's a lot on that list that they'll kind of occasionally feed on from time to time, but really the major ones are the ones we've noted.
I have a question about how long it takes for a female to lay a batch of eggs.
Oh, that's a good question. And typically they'll do that over the period of more than an hour or so. I've got a cool video. I saw one in action laying eggs 2 years ago, I believe. We'll have to pull that up and include it in your info for Sustainability Matters to add online somewhere. But it takes in the short video clip that lasts maybe 30 seconds, she gets 1 egg out. So it takes some time to lay 30 eggs and then cover it with the coating.
That's great. And so we may actually wait to send out the video of this until some point tomorrow. So Mark can get us some of those links and we can include them in the email. A good question here or suggestion as well, though we know that the agency's resources are limited, is VDAX or Extension doing outreach to truck stop drivers, posters at the pumps or truck washes, anything like that? They should be somewhat trained already, right? If they're coming through quarantine areas.
Yeah, there's been a pretty extensive push from all state departments of ag, USDA, and then also the Extension outreach arms of the land grant universities in each state to work at these high risk pathways. And certainly, again, I mentioned the I-81 corridor here in Virginia kind of being a major pathway. And so I know there's been a lot of work at the truck stops, at you know, kind of the filling stations and truck centers, the welcome centers. Those are all high risk points and really where we see spotted lanternfly moving around.
We also had another question, which I think Abigail did a great job of answering. I'd also like to hear Mark's perspective. The questioner asks, if you can illustrate the future we're hoping for, a best, decent, and worst case scenario.
Great question. So really, like many invasive insect species, what we typically see is a really high population at the beginning, and then that population will often crash or reach some more normal state rather than being quite so significant. And we hope that that is the case with spotted lanternfly. We see some fluctuations in population, and I think Kim alluded to that, and we were talking ahead of the webinar as we were preparing. Pennsylvania has seen some fluctuation in population, especially in the initial infestation area. We've even seen that here in Winchester, Virginia, kind of the original infestation area had really high numbers, and then for a season or a year or two, we saw lower numbers and they kind of rebounded. And I think what the theory around that and what it seems to be attributed to, again, predators may be playing a part, environmental conditions may be playing a part, but I think what we really see is the fitness and how much the host plants are thriving in the area. So as spotted lanternflies feed really heavily in high numbers on tree of heaven and some of these other species, they will work to deplete the resources in those trees and move on for a period of time. And as those trees recover in fitness, it seems that the population can rebound. But again, I'm seeing lots of dead tree of heaven in the region here because of heavy feeding over multiple years. So hopefully when we see this play out, maybe those resurgent populations will not be as significant as the initial one. And I think even longer term, you know, what we really anticipate seeing is the continued expansion of spotted lanternfly. That's just the reality of seeing that. We may be able to put some links to maps in there as to where tree of heaven is found throughout the United States, and then also where the potential spread of spotted lanternfly may end up. And it really aligns with wherever you see tree of heaven throughout the United States. Having some form of biological control to control this insect is really what's needed. So the goal for everyone is to continue to slow the spread, allow science to catch up, and that work to continue so that we have better management tools and potentially a biological control identified or identified that can be used with this insect.
We did also have an interesting question in the Q&A about potential biological control, and this is something that, you know, I've been talking with people about for a couple of years. And one of the things that we see running a conservation organization is that conservation and sustainability in general is often a series of trade-offs. And there's not necessarily a black and white answer. There are some things that there's a black and white answer to, but many things that you really have to make a judgment call. And one of those is the invasive praying mantis. And I started thinking about this a couple of years ago. One of our first pandemic projects, which you can still see online, is a wonderful video series called Native Virginia Now, made by some landowners who have about 100 acres of native habitat, pollinator meadows that they've put in, and they filmed them throughout the series talking about it, did a great job with it. One of the first things that they showed was in one of the early videos was the Utica, the egg case for an invasive mantis. And I said, guys, we're going to have to cut this. This is not the mantis. And Allie, one of the stars vets, said, no, I left it in because I've heard that they are eating spotted lanternflies in Pennsylvania. And I later heard the same thing from one of our sponsors, Mid-Atlantic Farm Credit, whose corporate office is in Pennsylvania. Our contact there said, yeah, my crankids are chowing down. As Mark mentioned, of course, you would probably need so many of them in order to actually deal with the population. And they are, of course, a threat to the native mantis, the Carolina mantis. So thoughts on leave them, don't leave them?
I don't know that I'm going to come down on that. I think you've alluded to some of the trade-offs with both sides of that. I'll say, fortunately, here in this region, I've seen high evidence of the native Carolina mantis, and the egg mass, the Utica that native mantis lays, is actually kind of a look-alike for spotted lanternfly egg masses. And I think that was noted in the chat and Q&A as well. So take time to identify what that Carolina mantis Utica looks like, because that was really the #1 look-alike that I've had reported to my office for spotted lanternfly egg masses. And that's a good guy. Again, those are native. And here in the Shenandoah Valley, we seem to have high numbers of them. I've seen quite a few occurring in our heaviest spotted lanternfly areas. So hopefully they're doing their work.
That's great. We had a question that Hannah put in from Facebook, right? Would horticultural oils be effective against nymphs and adults?
Yes, they tend to be, and we have them listed in our Virginia Cooperative Extension pest management guides as a potential insecticide that can be used.
Those are one that is slow to kill, though, right? Like you shouldn't expect instant death or think that it's not working if they don't die immediately. Is that correct?
That is, and horticultural soap, again, you're going to have to spray the insects directly. So to have any effect, because you're coating them and suffocating them is how those are working. So spraying the foliage and expecting them to walk across or feed and then be impacted by that is not how that's going to work.
Okay. Well, I think we have pretty much dealt with most of the questions, and we thank all of you so much for sticking with us. Again, we hope you will come to future webinars and get involved in person. If you are out here we're now in the Valley, in the Northern Piedmont, and in Northern Virginia, our project Making Trash Bloom, which is planting pollinator meadows at landfills, is planting this month at 2 new landfills in Rappahannock and Fairfax counties. So we maybe will see some of you there. Join us as members, join us as volunteers. You too can be one of our wonderful Zoom teamers, or be literally counting insects at some of our research sites. We had a great big bug bio blitz together with the Smithsonian and Mountain Vista Governor's School and the USDA last month. So we hope that you guys will get involved with sustainability matters. And we're going to put up a poll. Tell us just how you felt about the event, and also crucially what you might like to see in future. If there are aspects of spotted lanternfly education that you would like to see, or if you're just totally depressed and don't even want to think about it, tell us that too. But we really enjoyed spending this evening with you, and just appreciate everyone who came, and there were some wonderful questions, fantastic questions, fantastic discussion in the chat. I saw that someone in my old neighborhood, the East Village, killed 300 spotted lanternflies in one day, which I find pretty depressing. I've got to say they're not on my personal property yet in the valley, though I certainly see them when I'm out and about in many other areas. And it is scary how quickly these guys move, but science is progressing, and hopefully we will find a solution, whether it's a fungus or a parasitoid wasp or something else. It's happening with stink bugs, that they're disappearing now, and the parasitoid wasps are getting them. So there is hope. Even if, like Kim, you have to wash your car a lot more often until a solution is found. So with that, thank you all so much. And special thanks to our presenters and our Zoom team for their amazing work as always. And we look forward to seeing you all again soon. Good night. So, okay. You want to go ahead and end it?